Hello, friends. Welcome to A Little Room for Healing, where we aim to create a little more room in the world for authentic connection, insightful healing, and a deeper understanding of our hearts, ourselves, and each other through honest conversation. My name is Joel. I'm a Reiki and 13th Octave Laho Chi practitioner, a facilitator for deep healing, and your host. Joining me today is Iván Chocrón. Iván has 10 years of plant medicine facilitation and always had a strong pull toward bridging the worlds of healing and spirituality with science and psychology. Lately, he has been stepping away from holding retreats and more focused on educating people around the importance of doing healing work, with or without plants. He has started a YouTube channel and has been featured in many podcasts and conferences. Ways to find him are linked in the episode description. On this episode, we talk about death, the fear of it, and how it influences our beliefs. Iván gives us a closer look at what a shaman is, and we discuss the possibility of holding everything as true. As usual, we start with check-ins so we can be more attuned with each other. Come on in. Hi, Iván.
Hi, Joel.
Welcome to A Little Room for Healing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. You are visiting from Los Angeles, correct? Would you call Los Angeles the home base right now?
Yeah, it's the closest thing to home right now, even though I am pretty homeless in this moment.
yeah. That's why I was like, wait a minute. I'm not sure if he's really there or not. But there's a desire to return there, at least for a stint, if circumstances are leading that way?
Yeah, I am waiting for something to happen with my wife. When that happens, we will settle.
Well, interestingly enough, we're going to do check-ins in a minute, but interestingly enough, your wife was on the podcast last week.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And we talked about what she was looking to have happen. So
okay, then mystery solved.
Yeah, if you all are curious, check out the episode last week.
Right, exactly.
with Emily. Okay, so let's do some check-ins. I'll go first, and then I'll pass it over to you. Okay. I am still trying to center and just physically relax into the space, because we just found a beetle that Iván really wanted it to survive, so I ran upstairs and took it outside. I do admit I wasn't I was neither here nor there on its survival, but it does feel good that we let it survive. Mm-hmm. So I do feel good about that. And so I'm just kind of getting my heart rate back down, because I tend to rush things. And I'm feeling really spacious and excited about talking with you, Iván, and seeing what comes out of the conversation and where it goes and what kind of things we move in the space together. And you may hear some walking above, just to acknowledge that is present. I feel like that's my check-in. Nothing really wild is going on in my system today. I feel pretty calm and centered. So, How about you?
I'm feeling pretty calm and energized at the same time. I always love what comes out of these kind of conversations. So yeah, looking forward to it. Calm. I would say nothing out of the ordinary. It's not a specifically special day emotionally. I would say. I mean, sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, I can barely get out of bed, and you don't even understand why, and you're depressed, or you wake up and you're like, I want to hug everybody. Like there's like something very, and today I'm feeling like very much middle of the way in between. I mean, I don't feel any sadness or anything. Pretty cheerful, I would say.
No sadness and no overwhelming desire to hug everyone.
Except you.
Except, well, I'll take it.
Right now?
Yeah.
Hey.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I don't think I've ever started an episode with a hug before. Oh, that was really nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your check-in. And I gotta say, I mentioned this to you before about a word that kept popping in my head when I thought of you and I sitting here and doing a podcast together. And there was one word that popped in my head, and then there's also another thing that was popping in my head last night as I was sleeping. And I'm going to name those two things.
Name them.
The first one was death.
Just to start like easy and
The first word was
it's not
death.
specifically an emotional day in any way. So why don't we just talk about death?
And the word death came, well, I'll say the other word too. The other word is shaman. And the curiosity about, because you are one. Is that okay to say?
Yeah.
Because you mind that? Because you are a shaman, and so there's a curiosity of maybe giving a more in-depth look, a description of what a shaman actually is and what a shaman actually does. And I realizing that there are different ways a shaman can hold space and work, especially with medicine. So curious about that. And it feels like I also want to go back to the death thing. So the reason that death came up in regards to you is because I remember being with you in a ceremony, and multiple ceremonies actually, where you have brought up death and that you have a relationship with it, that you've been exploring it, and you're exploring your relationship with death. Not exploring death. I don't think you've died and come back yet, have you? Maybe you have.
You know what some of these substances can do.
Yeah, that's true.
I think, I'm gonna let you finish, but just to interject there, in a way, exploring one's relationship with death can only be enriched the closer one gets to it. And at the end of the day, we can't really say what it feels like to die and come back, because that specific thing has not happened to anyone. But there's certain experiences that even if people wouldn't have heard anything about them, about the experiences, or about each other's experiences. So if you were to isolate all of these people and give them certain substances, they all report that the experience felt like dying and coming back, even though they haven't heard each other, even though you might not have told them that ahead of time, so they weren't necessarily placeboed into it or affected ahead of time. And so we can't really talk for death as an actual thing that happened where your body fully decomposed and like you came back. We don't really know what that feels like, but we have experiences that for many humans in their own separate ways have felt that was like death. And whether at the end of the day, once we die, that is true or not, that death feels like that, I feel like it's a really good way of exploring your relationship to it. So since I started having those death-like experiences, I don't want to call it near-death experiences. I think death-like experiences feels a little bit more accurate. Since I started having them, my relationship with the idea of death has changed a lot over time, which I'm happy to expand on that. But I'm also aware I kind of interjected into something you were saying.
It's totally welcome that you did that. I don't even remember what I was saying because I was got drawn into what you were saying. Those experience. So, two things about that. One is that when you were talking about people's experiences with death or what they have claimed were near-death experiences, are you talking about people that have actually had their heart stop and then come back to life, like that? Those kinds of experiences, like near-death experiences, and without medicine, like real heart stopping, bright lights, connection with spirits, and then come back and be like, wow, my life has changed.
Well, even if your heart stops, that does not mean that you are dead, right? Like you're dead when at the end of the day you just can't come back. Your heart stops.
Sorry, I love that.
Yeah, your heart stops and you have, you up to maybe 3 or in some cases maybe 4 or 5 minutes of life left in you because your tissues still have oxygen in them. Your brain still has oxygen in it. So, you might have damage in your tissues, and what happens during those moments is something that, unless you go through it, we will not know. But people who have gone through that report somewhat similar experiences as those who have had death-like experiences with psychedelics. So,
oh, that's cool to know.
Yeah, right? It's like you can do it by smoking a little toad or by drinking a little wine or these things. You can also have death-like experiences using breath work, or you can just stop your heart for 5 minutes or so, and don't try it at home though, just in case. In case you're not very good at bringing it back. And in all these cases, it feels like people are reporting very similar things. And that has helped a lot in my relationship with death, for sure. My experience with death was, before psychedelics, was of absolute denial. And underneath the denial, not denial like I'm never going to die, but death, yeah, that thing, yeah, it happens to everyone. Some version of, let's put it in the shelf. It's going to be a long time from now, so think about it later. But that denial is a cover for the fear of it, the fear of all of this being gone. The only thing we know, whether you believe in past lives or not, whether you believe you're going to go to heaven or not, it doesn't matter, because we could be wrong. I kind of believe in past lives in a weird way, not so linear. I believe in a lot of things, yet I am aware that that's, at the end of the day, my belief. I can detach from the idea that my beliefs are not necessarily the truth, which is not true for everyone. Some people cannot detach objective truth, which we might not have necessarily access to, with subjective truth, or even more, which would be beliefs. I believe in whatever you want to believe in Buddha, in Jesus, in whoever you want to believe in, and I believe that's the path and that's the way. Fantastic, like totally go for it. Can you also acknowledge that at the end of the day, it's a belief, and that maybe 0.001% of chance that you could be wrong. So that chance, however big that is, that one's beliefs are wrong, it could be that then death happens and that's it. All we know is all gone. And I'm a person that has been always very much in love with life. A combination of being in love with life and attached to life. I really like this place. It's hard to be alive. Life is challenging. There are moments where I just don't want to live anymore. When like, oh, this is just too much. Not like suicidal tendencies, more like, this is just too hard. I'm tired. It's like somebody who's just got tired of doing something and wants a change, right? Yet, I really, really love it. I think it's a miracle when I watch astronomy, videos on astronomy, or read books on it, or on pregnancy and life and death and all. It's just all too magical. And I've always been like that. So for me, death was like the end of the magic. And so I was in denial. And psychedelics have, wow, have done a lot for that part of me. Should I make a pause? Do you want to say something? I feel like I'm giving some sort of monologue.
A very enjoyable monologue. I do have some questions, some thoughts. One is regarding beliefs. And regarding, let's just focus on your beliefs.
Sure.
When you say you're able to hold that they might not be true. There's a possibility. And I'm wondering what your beliefs then are based in. Like where does the attachment or the connection to those beliefs come from in you? If you're also able to hold that they might not be true.
Right. I would say that I come from I would call it atheist background. It's not really a background, but I don't know how you call it. It's not that I studied atheism, you know.
An atheist disposition?
Yeah. I was born from mostly atheist parents, maybe somewhat agnostic, but mostly atheist. I sometimes told the story of my dad me pointing at a church when I was a kid. I was maybe 5. I was in the car pointing at a church. What's that? I said to my dad, and my dad said, "That's a church." That was the first time I heard that word. So I was like, "What's a church?" And my dad said, "Oh, that's where people go waste their time." And I was like so confused, right? It was like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess people like wasting their time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just, this is no offense to any Christian or anyone going to church. This is how I grew up. And so death is so much worse when you're an atheist and you love life. It's like, that's it. So in a way, I'm somewhat grateful for that experience because that started changing a lot with psychedelics. I would say psychedelics where ayahuasca was my first psychedelic, and it made me realize how narrow that viewpoint was, yet it made me not discard it because I was exposed to it. You know that story of the many blind people touching a different part of the elephant. It's somewhat popular. It's maybe I butcher it, but the summary is that you have a bunch of blind people touching a different part of an elephant, and they are being asked, "What's an elephant?" And somebody would say, "Oh, an elephant. It's a long pipe-like thing with holes." And somebody's like, "What are you talking about? An elephant is this big trunk." And somebody else is like, "No, an elephant is a very tiny, fluffy thing." So, right? So, and they are all right, but it's not the complete picture. And so with this, I felt the same way with atheism. It's like, I was like the blind person. Like, life has no God, and you are born out of some incredible coincidence of a bunch of random atoms getting together in that specific way, and you happen to get self-realization and know that you exist, and then all of that is gone, and that's it, poof. So that is a perspective which has shifted a lot. Once I started doing ayahuasca, I was like, there's all of these other perspectives. It's like the blindfold was taken off, and I got to see maybe more of the elephant, maybe not the whole elephant, because an elephant is within your like view.
Yeah, you can only see one side of it.
Well, yeah,
right.
But an elephant is small enough to be within your eyesight.
Uh-huh.
I think reality is much bigger than an elephant.
I accept that.
I mean, reality contains several elephants at the very least, right?
Yeah.
Other things too. So, but it brought to me the idea of maybe reality is much more than what I think. It made me feel really small in a good way, in a humbling way. Okay, who did I think I was to be so sure about what reality is? So ayahuasca has shown me, and other psychedelics too, a bunch of other perspectives, and now I hold all of them, including the one that I came from, the atheist one. And so I am holding that as a potential possibility too. It doesn't feel right or true anymore. It doesn't feel true in my heart. After so many experiences, I'm like, I really, really, really don't think that the atheist route is the one that it will end up being the true one. Yet, because I'm small, and because I acknowledge that, and because I acknowledge that I don't see the whole elephant of reality, maybe that one is still true, and all of the other things are ways of experiencing life until you die and it's all gone. So it's not my belief, but I hold it as a possibility.
Yeah. I like what you just said at the end. I really, really like. I mean, maybe they're all just ways of experiencing life, which they are. They definitely are, and then perhaps one of them or multiple of them connected are what actually happens post.
Right. Because we also have one more perspective, which is that because we're small or our brains or our minds are limited, there are certain things that just don't land in the ways in which we experience the world, for example, where all of them are true. So our brains can't grasp that. How could it be that it's all gone and you're never, like that's it, atheism, no God, like died, gone, and also you're an eternal soul that gets reincarnated or works on your karma, or that the Christian way is the right way, and if you do what Jesus does, you go to heaven, and if not, you go to hell. And all of them could be true at the same time.
Wow, that's something I never considered.
Right, because that does not land in the world of duality. And our minds operate in the world of duality, either black or white. Either I'm a man or a woman. Either I'm happy or I'm sad. Can't be happy or sad at the same time. Either an ayahuasca experience is really intense or nothing is happening, but it can't be both at the same time, right? So it's like, either I'm alive or I'm dead. Can I be alive and dead at the same time? Our brains cannot grasp how that could be. Yet psychedelics have helped me have experiences of singularity where those things, they're not necessarily true right now, but I got to feel what it feels like to experience somewhat dual contradicting experiences at the same time. So if I could experience it at least a little bit, I am now holding the possibility that maybe could be true, and we just can't. Our brains are just not wired to think about it that way.
Amazing. That's. Can I share a story of a journey I had?
Oh, please let me stop talking.
And how what you just said about being able to experience being dead and alive at the same. The possibility that you can experience death and life at the same time is there was one journey where I experienced being diagnosed with prostate cancer and had to process that, and then experienced the body, and then experienced fighting the prostate cancer, and then experienced losing the battle to prostate cancer, and then dying. And then in that experience of death, I wasn't actually in the death. I was actually outside watching my death. And then I watched myself decompose. And then all the way down to skull. And then flowers coming out of the eyeballs.
Wow.
And then it all just kind of turning into dirt into a garden.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I never thought of it as, oh wow, I'm experiencing life and death at the same time, until you just said that to me.
Oh, cool.
Was like, actually, as the observer, I am alive, and actually feeling and experiencing all of the things that were happening in the death and the decomposition. That's really cool. That's kind of like, that's going to take some time to sink in.
Nice.
Like, I'm feeling it. I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I am very... Some of our gifts, most of our gifts, and maybe the truth is all of our gifts, but I'm not sure. Definitely most of our gifts stem from trauma and pain. And one of the things that generates a lot of pain in me is people who hold their truth as the truth and speak from that place. So it doesn't matter which truth that is. I experience the same pain from somebody who says atheism, there's no God, and that's the truth. And like, bah! As much as somebody says Jesus is the way, and that's the truth. Bah! Or whichever. They're just replace my words with blank space is the truth. And just when I see that, I experience a lot of pain. I think it taps into deeper wounds of how much certainty is a beginner of so many fights and disagreements. And certainty also closes our hearts a lot. Mm-hmm. Instead of, tell me what's your perspective. Your perspective is Jesus. You tell me what's your perspective. My perspective is atheism. And we could be like, imagine a world, this is so hard to imagine because people would be like, you're wrong. No, you're wrong, right? Imagine where I'm like, oh, cool. I don't believe in that. But that's so amazing that we are all so different and that's the way in which you're perceiving the world. And you're like, wow, you believe in atheism? Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, I wonder what it feels like. And we just have curiosity and then and share a moment of connection. Mm-hmm. And so I am not thinking of this in an aware way when I hear somebody be so stuck to their truth as the truth. But it does bring all of these emotions up of this is the beginning of conflict. This is the beginning of war. This is the beginning of disagreements, of family members splitting over voting for one candidate or the other. In Russia right now, I have, you probably know, I have a lot of friends in Russia. Mm-hmm. I've been there many times, and the older generation is pro-Putin and the younger generation is against it. And parents and children just like don't talk to each other anymore, right? And I feel like that is from the certainty that each part is, and the conviction that each part is attached to. And so, why was I saying all of this? I had a point that I clearly lost.
Can I tell you what came up for me while you were saying that? And maybe that your point will come back. Uh-huh. I was feeling into the truth that I've been holding when you were talking about people's truths and the conflict that arises. And my truth is that my experience matters. Mm. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that how much I believe that that's the right, the overall right thing, you know? I'm like, this is my belief. My belief is like, my experience matters, which means that, and I'm right in that. Mm-hmm. That's the end all be all. And also being like, if my experience matters, your experience matters. Mm-hmm. And then seeing how hard it is to hold your experience matters if your experience is grading against my experience mattering.
If my experience is your experience doesn't matter, it would be really hard for you to
hold that your experience matters.
Yes. And
I was thinking that because you were like, the world in which different beliefs can be like, oh wow, you're an atheist. That's so interesting. I want to learn. I want to hear about it. I want to learn about it. And then that person turning around going, oh, you're a Christian. I really want to hear about that. And then like those people holding each other's experiences and sharing their experiences. Mm-hmm. Like I love that.
Mm-hmm. And that is totally possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be practiced.
I feel like I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
I don't only think you've seen it. I have a feeling you've participated in it, just knowing you.
I may have.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the person was in that same mode with me, I've experienced it, yes.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
I wonder why I'm like, have I? I'm pretty sure I have.
Like,
I've sat with people who are Jewish and totally interested in what that means for them.
Right.
And them knowing that I'm not Jewish and totally being cool with the fact that I'm not Jewish. Mm-hmm. So yes, I have experienced it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you spend some time looking for more examples, I'm sure that you will.
Yeah.
the best that you will find a lot more.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that also, I think it would be good. I mean, sometimes we talk about enlightenment in these kind of settings, and when you said something like, either I want to be able to hold the fact that your experience is that I don't matter in a way that matters. Like, how hard would that be? Mm-hmm. I don't think that's impossible. And I think that is very, like, that's like a step closer to enlightenment in a way. If you manage to do that in a genuine way, which I think is possible by seeing which part of, if my experience is you don't matter, which parts of that touches wounds in you, and if you're able to hold that in a way that is genuine and that you have practiced and that you're good at, and you're like, I don't need to be seen by you because I can see myself and hold myself, then. And if you also think that my experience of you not mattering is wounded based, and you open your heart and have compassion for that, then you would be able to be like, tell me more about that. Like, your experience matters to me, even though my experience doesn't matter to you, because I'm so curious about what it feels like for other people's experience not mattering to you. Like, what's that world? Like, what is happening in there? It's like almost bringing compassion to the part of the person that is wounded, and it's bringing curiosity in your system that you can allow if you're holding yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're not holding yourself and you're in pain, the curiosity probably goes away, or is not a priority because you're in pain. That's not easy to do.
No.
but
not
it's
easy to do.
Yeah.
Not easy to do, but I'm seeing, as you're saying that, like, if I'm really holding the belief that my experience matters, it doesn't mean that I'm actually practicing it perfectly. I do believe that my experience matters, and I'm seeing now, as you are sharing this with me, or saying that your thoughts right there, that even in me holding my experience matters, sometimes I'm not holding really that my experience matters, because I'm having difficulty being with the parts of me that are wounded by not being seen. Mm-hmm. And that's an experience that I'm having, and I'm like shaming it or getting angry at it instead of holding it and loving it and being like, okay, I see that you're still there. And that is like really, truly being in my experience matters. Mm-hmm. And being able to be in their experience matters. Because then if I can say that if I can see that in myself and hold that in myself, then I can hold it in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can also apply your experience matters to the parts of you that are covered by shame. Because shame, it's like a cover for a part of you that's like in the shadow. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it is an indirect way of saying to the part, your experience doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So you can be like, your experience matters too, down there. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, here's one way of, also becoming curious. let's say that let's bring up some historical figure that did a lot of harm. We can it can be anybody. It can be Genghis Khan. It can be Hitler. It can be Franco. I don't know. I mean, maybe certain words trigger some of the audience and makes it harder. Let's say Napoleon. Whoever you want, like somebody who doesn't trigger you, ideally, to make this exercise a little bit simple, easier. Aren't you curious? That would be like, what's happening in Hitler's mind? Like, what's happening there? Aren't you? Of course, like, we can judge. We can. I'm not saying he was an angel.
It's not condoning it if you're curious about it.
Right. It's a moment where you can compartmentalize and say, like, yeah, he did all this harm. We are still suffering from the effects of something that happened almost 80 years ago, etc. Can we put that aside for a minute? We're not dismissing it. And have some curiosity. Like, what was happening in that mind? And then, because there's no, it isn't pure, it's not coincidence, and I don't believe that it is evil either. I don't think he was born evil. What happened in someone's life to get to that point? He became evil, if you will. But I don't think that that's an intrinsic thing that we're born with. So what has happened? What has happened? And then, whatever has happened must have made sense. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become who he became. It's just like a very simple, almost cause-consequence. And I get curious about that. And I don't use the curiosity to dismiss the bad things that him or any historical figure, or because if we can apply to that, then we can start going lower in that scale and apply to our parents, apply to our friends who betrayed us, apply to our girlfriend, and obviously to ourselves at the end of the day. Yeah. So that curiosity, I think, is healthy, and with the asterisk of not using the curiosity to mask or to dismiss or to kind of like put things aside.
I have that curiosity, and then I find myself running into a wall when I see that the person doesn't have that curiosity about themselves.
Aren't you curious about why they are not curious? What's happening in that person's mind, or what happened in their lives that they are not curious?
Yeah. I am curious about that.
Cool. What does connecting with that curiosity, does that change anything about the way you see people if you connect with that curiosity about why they are not curious?
It does. Yeah. It just makes me more curious. And then I guess you, like, when you land in that, you're like, oh, well, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there.
I think it can also lead us to a place of understanding the person better. And when we understand the person better, we tend to take things a little less personal. And I think also, like, we can become a little more compassionate. Sometimes compassion is, in an enlightened being, this is not true. But in us mortals, going back to death, we can go back there. Sometimes compassion is directly connected with understanding. Like, if I understand why you did the things you did, then maybe there's more chances that I'd be compassionate to you. Or you could have done the same exact things for the same exact reasons. And if I don't get it, then my heart might close and I might not be feeling compassionate toward you. So curiosity, in a way, leads to finding out. You can't find out if you're not curious.
Right.
Curiosity leads to finding out, which might lead to understanding, which might lead to compassion. And at the end of the day, that might relax at the end of the day, it's the best thing you can do for them, but it's the best thing you can do for yourself.
It's also when going down the line of curiosity around that with people, anytime you hit a block of like, wait a minute, why am I having a hard time being curious about this with this person? Then that's the point where you're like, what is the, where did I run into the block? And then take that and go, that's in me. Where is that in me that I'm like actually trying to avoid or not being curious about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfectly said.
Okay. I'm feeling like taking a break. It feels like the time to move into giving you some energy healing.
Fantastic.
And I want to give you a opportunity to set an intention if you'd like to set an intention for your... I think we're going to do 13th octave Lahu Chi on you today. So.
Yummy.
Yeah, it's pretty tasty.
Yeah. What am I supposed to say?
If you have an intention, you're welcome to say it out loud. And if you don't want to say it out loud, you don't have to.
I got lost in the yumminess.
That's fine.
I've known you for how many? 5, 6 years?
6.
And I've seen you grow into who you became. And I've never experienced it. So I think my intention is actually to experience you and where you landed. As for now.
As of this moment.
As of this moment, yeah. Yeah, I think that's my main intention, and just let it happen. See how it feels like.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I can dig that. All right. Intention.
No pressure.
No pressure. No, yeah. Just trying to like really, really convey where I am.
Yes.
All in this one session.
Yes. This is your chance, Joe.
It's my chance to really
6 years I've built to this moment.
Prove how healed I've become. Woo, okay, great. Intention received. I like that intention. I'm really, really, really fond of that intention, and I love the reflection of. I like the moment of reflection of where I was when I met you, and where I am now, and I see a big difference. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to channeling that energy, or the energy that I'm able to channel now because of that, into you. Do you see a difference? Did you see? You like that?
Yeah. I love you, buddy.
All right.
Yeah. It's yes.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for placating that little boy needed me to be seen. We will be right back after Ivan's 13th octave Lahu Chi session. And we are back from Ivan's 13th octave Lahu Chi session. And I would love to hear any experiences that you feel like sharing from it.
Sure. First, thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I didn't say anything after it was done.
Mm-hmm.
Saving everything for now. Thank you. Right now I feel much slower, and I feel like that, it's really nice. It's yummy.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty yummy.
It was yummy.
It's funny because I feel much more quiet which I'm not sure it works really well with a podcast. I had the constant feeling that I was in standby mode, kind of like my system was on, but like I mean, I could have moved if my life depended on it, but there was no desire or will or need, or it was like, and as you were working on me, every part that you would work on and then eventually move to something else would be left with this feeling of like an update happened there. Like kind of battery, like that part melted and slowed down, and it was left it kind of like a cleansing of that part. And because I was in some sort of standby, when you were done, and you said that I could come back now to a space, you saw that crazy routine. It wasn't like open your eyes. I felt like all of the places that have been updated needed to now adjust. It's almost like you did the update and then turn the machine on, and it can't operate right away. It needs to like process it. It's like I wasn't processing while you were doing it. I processed it all at once. Once I was ready to come back. And I never do that. It's not that, oh, that's my routine to come back from energy work. I was like, I was surprised. I was like, oh, what's my body doing right now?
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, just open your eyes. And my body's like, nope, we're going to do all of this stretches and yawns and moving around. And I still feel it a little bit. I had a lot of deep, profound moments of that I would get in a really good meditation day. Like, not all meditations go like that, and some are like very special, and that put me in that state. I assume it lasted like somewhere maybe 45 to an hour, I assume. Could have lasted another 10 hours and I would have been able to stay there. So I was like, the switch was off. It brought a lot of really beautiful thoughts and emotions and lots of gratitude, and I feel very, very refreshed, much better than a good nap. Like I feel like, very combination of updated and refreshed and showered from the inside. Quiet, slower, more peaceful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the report. The report back of your experience. It was great. It sounds lovely.
You are in moments saying things out loud that I think that a lot of energy healers say just to themselves, and that actually helped. Like, if you would have said those things to yourself without me knowing, in those moments it helped me get slightly out of the trance I was in, to bring awareness to what was happening, and your intentions were coming through your words. And so I kind of could feel them with you. So that I also liked a lot.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, I like that. Yeah, it is interesting coming back to the podcast after a session, because I just that's going through me too. So I'm also feeling like,
Yeah.
and things do chill and relax a little bit in the second half, almost every time.
I'm curious about how was it for you specifically working with me after so many years of me working on you?
Love that question. I was very happy. I was very happy to be able to provide to you in a healing space, and to hold a container, have you in my container, and to be able to be the container for you. And it's interesting. I was expecting more of what I'm about to say. I was expecting more of this, but there's a little bit, but not as much as I thought there was going to be, of like the worry, the nervousness of, oh, I hope this is doing something. I hope this is like working out for him. I'm getting better at holding that with people, especially with people that have done so much holding for me, that when I give back, I'm like, I really wanted to do what I know it can do. And but there was only a little bit of that today, which was really nice. I was really enjoying your deep sighs. You had a lot of these really great inhales and then exhales. I was really enjoying that, and that felt really good to witness. Yeah, it was really enjoyable. It's nice to be able to give back.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Had an interesting thought regarding the topic that we started the podcast with, which was death. And regarding, it's really interesting, regarding the fact that last week, or at least the episode airs a week from when a week before this airs, but it was only a week ago. Oh wait, so it was last week. Last week when I did an episode with Emily, with your wife, and we were talking about bringing life into the world, and we were talking about life. And here we sat down and talked about death.
Nice.
And I was just like, that was in my head. I was like, well, what an interesting balance. And not that there's anything inherently wrong with the top. There's nothing wrong with the topic of death. And it's not like we're talking like, it's not morose and it's not heavy. It's just, this is death. And with her, it was, this is like prepping to bring life in. And we're kind of talking about prepping to bring death in, or meeting death. And I just thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah. And I'm sure it was not staged like that.
No,
It just happened.
It really wasn't.
Those are the magical moments of life that makes me fall so much in love with it. And the many others that, if you are paying attention, you'll see all the time.
Yeah.
It's too magical.
Yeah. Totally agree with you. 100%.
Yeah.
I love the synchronicities and those kinds of magical moments. And then the other thing that came up while I was working was, I was wondering why the word shaman was coming to me last night. And then as I was working on you, I was thinking that we haven't talked about that yet.
Right.
And there's something, I think, I'd like to talk about it. But what was coming up with me is like, oh, we're talking about death and belief and kind of connection to the other side. Subtly, we're talking about that in the beginning. And that's similar. There's like part of that in shamanism being the bridge. Will you share a little bit about what you believe shamanism to be and what it means to you to play in that realm?
Yes. I have like 3 or 4 things that came to my mind, and I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding where to start. I'll start somewhere, I guess. No order of importance. The original shaman is or this word, it comes from Siberia in Russia. And nowadays, I think it's just how things have developed in the West and the internet and what is popular. Shamanism is mostly associated with plant medicine in here, at least. And plant medicine is mostly associated with ayahuasca. Even though probably there's more mushrooms consumed, generally speaking, than ayahuasca, mushrooms are not always associated directly with the concept of plant medicine. Like people, especially because it's very common for people to do them by themselves, whereas ayahuasca is mostly done with a facilitator. And that facilitator is called a shaman here in the West. And so from there, it stems that shamanism is everything that the original ayahuasca facilitators in the jungle in the Amazon do. And that is like a little section of shamanism. And it's not even where the word comes from, right? Mm-hmm. So I debated with this word a lot. And in the West, I mean, it's natural for us to bring our reality into it. And our reality also contains wounding, and it contains ego in the way in which we have it here in the West. And so the word shaman became extremely charged with people wanting to be shamans, people liking to have that word associated with them, because that means like you're like, there's so much. Some people would love to be like the guy in the jungle, or some people like to be the person in power, or some people like to be the healer. And I feel like the word shaman is usually used in a way that doesn't really represent original shamanism. And second, we have added all of it ourselves to it. And so, maybe at the beginning of the podcast you said, you're a shaman, and I said, mm-hmm. And you're like, can I say that? I'm like, that's fine, we'll talk about it. I usually don't like being called that. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but there's all the charge that, like, you have, I don't know how many viewers, and I think you're going to have as many views of that word as viewers you have, and they all will be charged in some way. So I tend not to call myself that, yet I don't necessarily disagree that I am that, but not because I serve ayahuasca, or not because of the plants, but I think there's something beyond plants, beyond psychedelics, that a shaman ultimately is or does. And I think that is left out for interpretation a little bit. Mine is that it's like a doctor that does not use Western medicine or even Eastern medicine, is a combination of is a person that can do both diagnose and healing, and uses different tools for it. Plants are one of those tools, but not the only. And honestly, I would have never, it's crazy for me. Like if you go back, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, and you show me a screen of the future where we're talking here right now, and say like, hey, this is going to be you're going to be called a shaman. And like, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like in my most atheist moment when I was studying engineering and teaching math, and like, I would be like, please God that I don't believe in, make this future not happen. Like, I would have been horrified by this idea. And I think like there is something like a little raw diamond that each one of us has, at each person, that can be polished. And that was hidden for me. It's like a shaman in disguise that you don't even know it. And I feel like I've slowly dropped into that place. A lot of it thanks to the plants. I don't think I could have gotten to the place where I'm at today with shamanism without the plants. But I do feel that I can continue the path of shamanism without them. So plants help a lot, and sometimes is the best tool to help somebody open up, but not always. And sometimes you can perform shamanism, which is diagnose and healing using other tools. And so I'm grateful to the plants because they have taught me. It was like university, I was like going to school, and taught me how to actually do shamanism in my own unique way, which is not the way, and is a way. And there are many moments where we are sitting together with you or with someone else, and I feel that I immediately know what's going on with you. And that intuition has gotten much and much better with time. Sometimes I fail, like some doctors sometimes fail at diagnosing, even with all the Western tools and technology and everything. But I have been noticing that as I'm talking to people, people have been reporting back that it landed so much when, like, if we were to just do a session right now without plans, where we start talking about what's going on with you, you might start bringing things up, and I might catch everything that's in between the words. So you can say, like, I'm struggling because, I don't know, I have this pain in my back that never leaves me, and this and that, and also, and I'll be like, tell me more. Be like, well, maybe, like, I am feeling lonely about this and that. And then, like, you're saying all of these things, and in between the words, there's space. And that space tells me, it's hard to put in words, actually, but that space tells me what's actually going on that's making you say those words. And by paying attention to that, I feel like I can come up with, and it's not come up like out of thin air, like it's like feeling into you. It's like using empathy. It's a skill that's hard to both teach and describe, but I feel like that's been getting better and better with time. And so, and then sometimes things come up and I'm like, where did that come from? Why did I just say that? And the other person's like, that. And I'm like, huh? And that's the magic, right? That we were just talking about. There's some magic that's in, I wouldn't even call it in the air, but present, that I think the more you practice shamanism, and if you have a calling for it, the more that it just starts like catching this, and you're using your body as a translation between the esoteric and that we cannot see. It's like, yeah, you mentioned it as a bridge or a translator, right, of one area of existence to another completely different form. You were laughing.
What was I laughing about?
When I said the pain in the back.
Oh,
do you have pain in the back?
I don't, but it reminded me of a journey that I did with you like 5 years ago, where I did have a pain in the back. That you helped guide me through. That's why I laughed.
Yeah.
I was like, what an interesting example.
Yeah. and that's what I'm talking about. Like, I wasn't thinking of that moment, and probably you weren't even thinking of that moment. Yet it's somewhere, and something makes me catch it without me knowing that I'm catching it. Right? And I think imagination is a version of that, and we all have imagination, right? But when you imagine, like, okay, I'm gonna draw a painting right now, or like something like that, or start writing a fiction book, where is that coming from? To me, where that is coming from, which is a very different view that I used to have, is that is already there. There where? Who knows? There. It could be a billion light years away, or it could be in a place that cannot be measured in distance, that it is part of the fabric of reality. And your brain is like an antenna that has a specific frequency. Like in the radio, you start changing the frequency and you start catching different like sending antennas that are sending that, right? And it's like the brain is that is basically everything is happening now. Everything is being sent. Purple dragon with that spits ice instead of fire. It's like, why did I just say that? Where did that come from, right? So it's like my brain attuned to everything is being sent, and where you attune is. This is one potential version. I believe in that. I could be wrong. And I feel shamanism uses that.
So bringing it back.
Yeah. And I feel like shamanism is the practice of getting more and more and more attuned to what's happening in the other person, and more attuned to knowing what to do about it. So the problem is that if you use the word shaman, most people are not gonna think these things. In the West, people are going to be like, oh, ayahuasca, native South American, dark-skinned person with feathers that shakes a rattle, and that's why some other people are really triggered by the word. It's like, you're just a white guy. What are you talking about? You're not a shaman. I was like, right, I'm not a shaman if the word shaman means those things to you. And because that word means so many things to so many people, when it comes to ayahuasca, I just call myself a facilitator. Internally, I do feel there is shamanism in me and that I can perform shamanism in all the ways that I described.
I like to use the word facilitator too. I don't even there's nothing in me that even says that even like relates or connects to shaman, the word shaman. I'm finding that as I'm like really discovering what I have to offer, I'm finding that the words medicine man are really coming through strong as something that I offer. And not just medicine. It's not just actually literal medicine, right? Plant medicine. It's presence and curiosity and the ability to engage with laughter and being just a person that can bring things out in people.
Yeah, the idea that medicine must be a substance. I think medicine is that which it heals. And all the things you just mentioned can be very, very healing.
Yeah.
Actually, presence, you talked about presence. So many people are wounded out of lack of presence from their parents when they were children. So wounding needs healing. That of which is healing is a medicine. And if presence is the thing that they didn't get and they get it, that can be literally medicine.
Yeah.
No 100%. Substance involved, but
exactly.
That's again a very Western approach to healing.
Yeah. There's this. I think that when people are starting the healing journey, and they don't know what they're needing, and there might be some reservations of just sitting and talking to someone and just having someone listen to me, like what is that going to do?
Right.
It does a lot.
Yeah.
It does a lot when the person's really there and tuned into you and doing what you're talking, like not just presence of listening, but also doing what you're talking, which is listening to the in-between. And being able to reflect it back in a loving way and not a forceful way, in a way that's like knows when they're ready for it and when they're not ready for it.
Totally. Sometimes you talked about bringing laughter as one of the medicines. And sometimes when it comes to all these topics, healing and spirituality, I love bringing laughter too, because it's so taken so seriously, right? So when you were telling me about the person saying, well, what's that gonna do? What's your presence gonna do? I thought of like a kind of like a somewhat playful answer to that, because at the end of the day, I think it lands better. And it's like, well, it's not too much about what my presence is gonna do. It's more about what my presence is going to undo. It's going to undo
Wow, that's cool.
all of the things that should have not been done to start
Not
with.
been done yet. That to stay with laughter for a second. One of the things. Okay, so on to sadness.
Yes, seriousness, please.
One of the. Okay, a little sip there. One of the things that I always from the first time being in a container of yours journey loved is that our ability, our connection in the laughter realm, and how much that always came through whenever we were engaging throughout whatever retreat or ceremony that we were part of. That was one of the things that was always so healing. It was one of the major healing things about being like, I'm in excruciating pain, and then you come over and you say something that just fucking makes me laugh uncontrollably. And to have the laughter come into the realm of pain and be like, oh wow, really it is a penetrating medicine. And to not hold so gravely pain, I have to be like this. No, pain, I can be like, I can enjoy it. I can have a different relationship with it.
Yeah. It just, I go through the same sometimes. When like, I was just being too serious. The same exact moment, but with that flip of perspective, it's like, it just changes everything. Yeah. I always enjoy that about it. Not everybody has that. Or another way of saying that is that it doesn't come up from me as natural with everyone as it comes with you. Right. With some people, and you are definitely one at the top of those. Yeah. So you're carrying that, and I am predisposed to it. But because you're carrying it, I pick up on it unconsciously, and then when I communicate with you, it comes up that way. Yeah, and that's what I was kind of talking about, of the thing that's already there.
Oh, that's cool.
So a lot of it is that you are already carrying that. Yeah. And I might just pick up on it, bring it up, and then it's like I am feeding you your own medicine in a way. It's already there, but you're not as much in contact with it. And so I take it out of you and give it back.
That's... Yes, 100% to that. Love that. I've been really learning more, and I may have said this on a podcast before, on an episode before, but I'm learning more and more that as a healer, as a facilitator, as a shaman, medicine man, whatever the word is that you're bringing healing to someone, or not bringing healing to someone. What we're doing is guiding. I don't even want to say guiding. Keeping. God, what's the word? Reflecting back to them that they are their healer, and their medicine is in them. And what you just said about the laughter is already in me, and that's medicine. That's medicine. That's helping me. That is what we're doing. Yes. Just setting a container, being like, about keeping the focus back onto it's in there, and we're helping you find it.
Yes. Yeah. It is common in the world of healers to think that a healer is someone who heals rather than someone who helps somebody heal themselves. And my first experiences with facilitators serving ayahuasca was that on steroids. like, I am going to give you the wisdom that you need to hear. And a lot of times were words of wisdom that sounded really wise and sounded really true, and that I am pretty sure were true for them in a specific situation. And it's like, let's say I just said this thing about you and the laughter, and now I'm like, actually, this is the first time I said that, right? But now that I said it, I can remember it. And then maybe I see that it landed with you. And so in the future, I'm with somebody else. And if I were to be like, oh, I'm going to use that same thing I said to Joe now, that person might not really understand what's going on. They might hear words that sound true and that are true ultimately, yet something might be off. It's like, it doesn't fully fit. But people are not trained most of the times to tap into that subtlety. So what's the problem there is that, like, it's like a truth that it is taken out of context might become a falsity. It might not become true anymore. And that was a lot of what I experienced at first, which was shamans or facilitators just dropping truth bombs one after the other that they had on their sleeves. Like, they read it in a book, or they said it once and it was true, and now they are remembering it and saying it. And at first I was like, what's going on? That sounds really wise. I want to remember everything they're saying. It's all so amazing. And then I was new to healing work too. So, it's like a new area where you don't know how to navigate. And then there was a very, very quiet part of me saying something's off here without having at all the capacity to identify what that was. And now looking back, I know exactly what was going on with them and why they were doing that. As I started identifying that, I wanted to become less of that and landing more into the reason why I'm a healer is because I am here to help you heal yourself and to guide you through the process of how to do that and not to do it directly on you. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's as I hearing that, and then it makes me reflect on when I first started facilitating and having that. There's that loud part of you or me that was like, I feel like I need to have the gem to say.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to have the words of wisdom in this moment. And it takes a while to like work through that and realize, oh no, that isn't. It's okay if I'm just here in silence. It literally is more probably more powerful if I'm just here in presence with the person as they speak to me. And they're going to come to what they need on their own. If I'm just like, I'm listening and it's coming through me and it's almost energetically without me saying anything. What they're saying and expressing to me is going in and then coming back to them. And then they're going, oh, this is what it is.
Yes, totally. I wish I would have come to that much quicker. It seems to me it took me much longer than you.
Well, I had the blessing of having teachers who had gone through it already.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
to be able to go to them and say, I really want to blah blah blah, and then saying, I really want to say the right thing, and them saying, can you be with not saying anything, or can you be with not saying the right thing?
Right.
Even
harder. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Feels like it's nearing the end, but I want to bring up, you said during the break right before the energy healing that you felt like we brought up a bunch of topics that we didn't wrap up. And I mean, we might not have time to wrap it all up, but I just wanted to check in with you on that, and if that was something that felt unresolved for you.
Well, I was putting myself in the position of the audience, and I feel like the death topic was left somewhere in the middle. Like, you asked a question, which I can't remember, And I started maybe setting the ground to answer it, I guess, not consciously, but I noticed that that's what was happening, and then we left. And I feel the question was unanswered, because you mentioned something related to my experiences and my relationship with death. And
that was the first question.
Yeah. And I don't know, I just ranted on something. Which I can't remember. But I do know what was left without saying, I think, if you want to go back there.
Yeah, I would if you feel up to it.
Sure. Okay, so I was saying that my relationship with death changed since psychedelics. So I think I talked about everything that happened before psychedelics. And
right.
Yeah, what happened after is a bunch of things. First, as a quick recap of what happened before, is that I was putting it on the shelf and ignoring it. And in a way, that's being an atheist is one of the worst possible existences if you think about it. There's a perspective where that is really rough, because if you love life and then it's all over, man, so hopeless, right? It's rough. You're going to fear it most likely, and even whether you want to admit it or not, and that was definitely my case. So what psychedelics did was, first, it started bringing it up. The topic of death is the topic of today's journey. And the topic has a bunch of potential experiences. Either you have a near-death experience, you cross into the other world, into the underworld, you hang out with the dead for a while, you hang out with the angels for a while, you hang out with God for a while. And these are all experiences that all of them, each one, were so new to me. And they were opening me up to the potential for having another perspective beyond atheism. And now it's like I have all of these other perspectives where atheism does not feel to me that is what's actually happening, where there's no God, where after death everything's gone. Obviously the word God is way more charged than the word shaman. You will definitely have as many interpretations of that word as people are in the world. So so obviously it's not probably needed to say that when I mean God, I don't mean the classic bearded guy in the sky. My God has shaven.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, a clean cut.
Yeah, it's a clean cut God. So he has a mohawk.
Oh, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, he's like an avant-garde God.
Very cool.
Yeah, likes punk rock and a few earrings. So even though I still keep that as a possibility, I have all of these other ones now. And the more I explore them, the more that some of them just ring truer to my heart. And some of them, for a moment, felt like they rang true to my heart because I was so afraid of death, and I wanted that one to be the one, right?
Yeah.
And it is really hard to confront that and to admit it to oneself. It's like, my belief is stemming from fear. And I honestly, for your audience, I would say that it is highly likely that whatever belief you have around death is probably a mask for your fear. I can't speak for everyone because, I'm sure there's a lot of people where that is not the case. And if somebody listening to this is like, I'm definitely not one of them, I would encourage that person to first if you are moving so fast into saying I'm not one of them, isn't that coming from a place that isn't that to be distrusted, right? That rush to be like, no, I'm not one of them. Why did you say it so fast? Why do you say it with so much desperation? And I am not pointing fingers at anybody. That was definitely me, and I can identify it in a lot of people. And I'm not asking people to stop believing what they believe in, but can we identify that it's a belief, and that if it's around death, there's a high likelihood that it might be masking some level of fear. Even if you're a Christian and you believe in heaven and all of that, could it be...
Question.
Yeah.
Would you, pardon the interruption,
No
would
problem.
you say that it's fear of death or related to death, or is it could be related to a fear of something going on in life?
Wanna say more?
You say your belief of what happens after death is based in a fear. And I'm wondering if it's just based in a fear of what, not knowing what happens after death, or based in fear of being afraid possibly of the way that life is unfolding, the way, or being afraid to live, being afraid to experience.
I think it's both. I think when we are talking about these topics, duality starts breaking a little bit. I mean, we will have a tendency to go to it's either one or the other, and I would probably, my heart tells me it's both. Like, you can't really fear death if you don't fear life, and you can't be really fearing life if you don't fear death. It just, I could try to explain what that means, but it doesn't feel right to explain it. Like, I'll just drop it there, and you can ponder on it or not. And then another thing that happened with psychedelics, especially with ayahuasca, is that, and we were talking about this a few days ago, which is how much it has put me in touch with my mortality rather than with death. So this sounds similar, but for me it's very different. It's like I fear more my mortality than my death. I fear more the fact that I am going to die than once I'm dead. And like, sometimes it just took me to places where I can see and feel the passing of time, and how every second is sacred, and how every second is lost. And it's like so freaking intense in those moments. It's like, another second passed, another second passed. What have I done with this second? Have I brought presence to this moment? Have I brought gratitude to the fact that I was alive another second? And it's like, oh my God, like, give me more time. And then I start like really getting in touch with what's happening inside me. And I'm really grateful to those experiences, because they have, I would say, pushed me to stop ignoring the topic of death, where to the level in which I was ready. And one of the reasons why I keep experiencing it over and over again when I drink ayahuasca is because I was not ready to take it all in one go. And so I experience it, I integrate it, and eventually I'm ready for more. And then I experience it in a different level, and I integrate it. And today, I feel that I have been so in touch with that fear, and that I can identify much more when a belief could stem from that fear, and when a belief could stem more from what my heart is telling me is true. And yeah, I am less fearful of death today, because what my heart tells me is true is not atheism, and it's all over. Maybe you're curious about what is my heart telling me, but I think that would require a very, very, very long explanation, because if I could summarize it, I would, but it could potentially just not make it justice. Like, if I say just a few words on it, probably the audience and you and everyone will just fill in the holes, which will probably not be as I'm experiencing it.
Yeah.
but I experience the world extremely magical, and life and death are part of it. And I think I'm gonna probably leave it there. And yeah, that feels good to believe that from a place that doesn't seem to be fear-based. Yet I'm always going to be inquiring, is this out of fear of death? Is this out of fear of death? The more I do it, the more that those who can see it in me are more likely to inquire within themselves, which I hope that it will bring some healing into them around this topic, which is pretty big.
Yeah, it is sizely.
Yeah.
What I loved about what you just said about how you kept what's in your heart, and kept it precious to you is like, that's your experience. That's your experience, and your experience matters.
Thanks.
And to try to share your experience fully and have other people fill in the holes, and then like if you get wind of holes that are being put in, like fillings that are being put in the holes that you didn't get to explain, like that doesn't quite feel good, because then you're like, it doesn't quite feel good to have to, I don't know, for me personally, when I think of it, it doesn't feel good to have people fill in the holes and like be like, but that's not my experience.
Correct. So beautifully put. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Speaking of everybody's experience matter and the curiosity and what we were talking about of like, oh, I'm an atheist or I'm a Christian, and then like having a conversation, like that feels like an ongoing conversation of being like, I really want to know what's going on in this hole, but I don't want to fill it in myself. I'm curious, do you have more time to share a little bit more about what's in your heart? Like, that's the kind of care that I would want someone to have with me.
Yes. All you can do then is give that. And those who see it will learn from it.
Yeah.
Most likely you will attract people attracting, not like a magnet. I mean, that could be true too, but people are going to be interested if they are interested in that, and you're gonna have a nice bond around that.
Yeah, definitely. It's also, speaking that out loud, realizing just how difficult it is to not fill in holes. Like to really be able to live in that space of, oh, I see that there's something I don't quite know yet.
Yeah.
Will you share what it is, your experience of that thing?
Yeah.
It's so hard to not automatically fill in the hole.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
We want to make sense of things we don't understand or know.
Very much. And since we're talking about death, I think if you follow what you just said down at the end of the day is fear of death. Because not understanding is fear of the unknown, and the biggest unknown is death.
The great unknown.
The great unknown. And so if we can become friends with death a little bit more by staying open to one's beliefs being a mask for the fear of death, and we become friends by doing healing around it, then one might become less afraid of the unknown and also less prone to filling holes of things that one doesn't understand.
Amazing. Love it. I love it.
I'm going to save that one in my sleeve, and then use it again whenever it's right.
Yeah.
So that I can drop a truth bomb.
Fantastic. Great. I'll give you the transcript so you can have word for word what you said.
Yeah, fantastic.
I feel like that is a wonderful place to land.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow, Iván, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your thoughts and your experience.
Thank you for inviting me. I had a lot of fun, and it was a big pleasure. And thanks so much for the energy work.
You're welcome.
And for giving a platform for people to do a little bit of healing, even just listening. That's awesome. I'm so happy these spaces are available now.
Awesome. Thank you. Would you like to close with a hug, since we started with a hug?
Always.
Thank you. And to all of you out there, again, I invite you to make a little room for healing in your lives. And I will see you next time. Thanks for making a little room for my podcast. I'd love to be a part of your journey too. Follow me on Instagram at A Little Room for Healing for news, updates, offerings, and connection. To book a session with me, go to www.alittleroomforhealing.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, follow the link at the bottom of the episode description. Have a beautiful day.